Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. It's our first episode of February, and the Super Bowl is, in a few days as well. So we are super excited about everything that's about to happen right now. We are very fortunate today to have a very, very amazing creator with us who has a whole lot going on that she somehow manages to balance. So we're very excited to unpack a lot of that. Once again, welcome to Beyond Influence. I'm Kwame Pia with my co-host Scott. And today with us, we have Yanina.
Hi. I'm like, were you nervous to say my last name?
I paused. I stopped for a quick second. I was like, you know what? We're going to, kind of like Cher or Beyonce. We're going to Yanina.
Okay. Let's go with it.
It's okay. We can go Oyarzo.
Love it.
Look at the accent. Well, Yanina, thanks so much for joining us today. For those of us who may not know who you are, I'd love to just start the conversation a little bit with telling the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Yanina Oyarzo. I am Venezuelan. I was born in Venezuela. I am a creator. I am a host. I am a jack of many traits, but I basically started in the influencing world, I want to say, in like 2014, 2015. I really took it serious around 2016. I started in music business, actually, which is how everything fell into even my first job with Tidal in 2012, 2013. And after that, I just kind of used my knowledge in music marketing to start marketing myself. And I'm like, okay, well, if I think of an artist when it comes to a single, an album rollout, let me just start using that for myself. I went through a breakup in that time and I wrote down 100 brands that I wanted to work with and started really researching the way they were marketed. And I looked at everything that I had around my house because I had no money. And I said, I can't go to Sephora because it's really expensive, but I can use this makeup that I have here and let me try to replicate the pictures, the aesthetics, the colors, the vibe. And I started getting reposted by brands. I started getting brand deals. And from there, I was just like, wow, I can make a living from this. And I went from leaving the music business, leaving jobs doing creative direction to then full on doing influencing. And then I fell back into hosting. And then I actually left a network 2 Julys ago and decided to create my own podcast. And now I am a full-time creator and I have a podcast called Similarly Different.
That's amazing. I love the stories, and especially one like yours where, I think a lot of people think about overnight success in influencer or creator. And I think more often than not, it is a slow journey. It's a long journey. It's a lot of learnings. And I love what you said about, I can look around my house and I can find the makeup that I have.
Yeah.
I can make things work. And I love that kind of a little bit of constraint can drive a lot of creativity. And so is there one particular moment in where you're like, oh man, this particular video, I thought it was going to bomb, or I didn't think I had the resources to produce it? Just for that creator who's out there who's like, I don't have XYZ camera. I don't have XYZ access to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So it was my second brand deal, but it was my first beauty. And it was Laura Mercier. I love Laura Mercier. Any girl that listens or watches this knows that Laura Mercier translucent powder is just the OG of the OGs. And they had came out with lipstick tubes and they reached out to me and they were like, we want to give you a brand deal. We would love, for you to submit these pictures. You have these days. They sent me the brief. I was like, okay. I had a fake manager email and it was me the whole time, doing that. Everybody does that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. And then they were like, okay, what's your rate? And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. Right before that, I had gotten a blog post rate of $500 from Target Vaseline, which was my first ever brand deal. So I was like, do I charge $500? Do I go up? I didn't know, but they were like, well, we're going to want to license these pictures. So at that moment, I was like, okay, wait, this seems a little bit more serious. So I called a friend of mine. He's an amazing photographer. His name is Orinary. And I was like, hey, I'm supposed to submit this rate to this brand. What should I submit? And he was like, okay, what's the usage? What's this? What's that? And he was like, honestly, I don't know, I would charge $3,000. And back then I was going through a divorce. So $3,000 to me was like, I'm banking, And I was like, oh my God, are they really going to say yes? And he was like, no, I think you lay it out how you want it. He's like, look, if I was a photographer, that's probably the lowest I would charge. So I said, okay. So I went, this is pre-ChatGPT, and I just tried to write it 3 different times in the most prolific way that I thought it could be and believable. And then they approved and they were like, yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. I went, and to shoot the pictures, I hired a different photographer because I couldn't afford Oren. And I went and I hired another photographer, and 30 minutes before he was supposed to show up to my house, he canceled. And I was like, oh, fudge, what am I going to do? Like, I need to turn in these pictures, all this stuff. So I did what any resourceful person would do. I grabbed a stack of books. I put my camera on self-timer, and I started taking pictures of myself with the lipstick and, doing it. And I ended up turning them in, and they actually ended up using them for newsletters, for different things. And I'm like, they have no idea these were all self-timer pictures, but I got it done. So
I love that. That's amazing. It is funny how, everyone thinks they need the hottest camera, they need all this lighting equipment. And yeah, there's certain pieces of equipment. And if you were to hold it up side by side, maybe you can get a more professional outcome. But I think, especially in today's world, like so many of the most viral videos are just random, half blurry iPhone images or videos. It doesn't need to always be like full glam all the time.
Yeah. I think the audience also wants to be able to be relatable. If you have too high of production value, sometimes it just takes away the authenticity of being able to connect to the person.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of content you're making, right? For me, it's funny when I look at. I actually just dropped a piece of content today, a collaboration and partnership. Scott's got a little smirk on it. It's definitely one of the spiciest pieces of content that I've put out. But we had fun with. Yeah, it's some Valentine stuff. It has to do with like cleaning and how that leads to greater things, we'll call it. But ultimately, when we thought about like the production of this, we have a friend who has really great quality stuff, and we thought about bringing him on to make this, but we were like, you know what, like to make it just look simple, bring out our camera phone and just have fun with this. I feel like people are going to enjoy that the most, and the reaction from it. I think in terms of pacing, this is by far going to be our most significantly successful brand partnership in terms of like volume and reach. It's been so good. And in terms of like the production quality, I didn't do any editing of anything. I literally just like, we took a bunch of clips, we chopped them together, and we were like, this is kind of funny. And so I don't know, when you think about what really resonates with people, it is about knowing your audience, knowing what they'll stick with, knowing what they'll laugh at. So it's a cool thing to look at. When you think about yourself and your resilience and who you are, I know we haven't really touched too much on, your background and your culture, but, you are Venezuelan, which, by the way, one of my closest friends, probably maybe one of my best friend. His name is Ignacio Farias. He lives in New York. He's Venezuelan. One of the greatest guys ever. But when you think about your journey, like when I think about Nacho, he's a very, very resilient human being. And I can't say that I want to generalize too much and say every Venezuelan is that way.
Every Venezuelan is very resilient.
So far, I'm 2 for 2, right? The 2 that I know so far, very resilient. So when you think about your background and your journey and who you are as a person and your culture, collaborating and putting all those things together, how much has that impacted your journey up until this point?
It's so much of who I am. I always say that I grew up in Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela. I lived there until I was 8.5. And during that time, my mom actually came to the States, and I was raised by my aunts and my uncles and my grandma. And it's a very common story that you're raised by your grandparents when you're an immigrant. And it is my happiest, and it's what I hold dearest to my heart. Still, when I think about my childhood, my happiest moments were in Venezuela, was the childhood that I had. And I think it's because from, my uncles having a what is it called when they have like a not a cheese factory, a deli. My uncles had a deli, and they like made their own cheese. And then they also were in charge of delivering all the orange juice to supermarkets in the area. So I just saw really hard work when it comes to that from my uncles. And then from my aunts, they were all nurses in the military or teachers. And I just saw so much resilience, hardworking. My grandma had over 15 kids, over 124 grandkids. And there was not a meal missed that she was not making breakfast, lunch, and dinner for whoever was in the house coming in and out. Wow. And I think that just showed me when you want to, you will, and you will find a way. So I always say that my best attribute is my resourcefulness. I don't have to have the best thing. I don't have to know the right person, but I will if I need to, because I will find a way to it. And I think that like I've instilled that in me from when I was a child. And even from seeing my mom, the way my mom came to the US was there's this superstition that in New Year's, if you want to travel, you go around the block with a luggage. And she did it every year until she was able to come to the US. So, when you want to, you figure it out.
That's why there's so many mental images of like just people circling the street on New Year's with luggage, like 124 people trying to have dinner. It is amazing though, not to make light of it. I just think we've talked a bunch of different times about how, your life shapes you, the culture, the experiences, the hardship, and how it kind of helps define who you are. And I think as a creator too, that shines through and it resonates with individuals who have, similar stories. And we talk a lot about the power of social media being like this connector of people with shared experience. And also those who don't. Like I can appreciate other cultures more by getting this like real glimpse into what life is like for a whole variety of different people. But I'm just trying to think about, there was some funny stat, and it was like the amount of people you can actually be close with. There's like a theoretical limit based on like human capacity. And I was trying to think like, if I had 124 grandkids, I don't think I could remember all their names. Like I would probably fail.
No, I think like the first round of us is, I want to say like 40 is the first round. And then like they just all had a lot of kids, but like their parents did. So, but no, I think I was the favorite and they all know that. So
I was like, you're the favorite when like everyone remembers your name and who you are. Like,
I also had like the whole, like my mom wasn't there. So like I was also the favorite for that reason.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, digging into that a little bit as well, obviously, I feel like we don't touch on social and society issues enough in here right now. So, not to get too deep into it, but, who you are as a person in your culture definitely played a big part. You said like it is literally like everything within your existence, and I think when I connect with people like you, I think about myself and how deep my cultural lineage really has to do with who I am, how I act, things like that. And yeah, I think it's really funny because sometimes the way that I present myself outwardly is very different from the way that, it is really interesting. The cultural, aspects that define who you are as a human being. When you think about yourself and the fact that you've been surrounded by so many different people as you were going through it, and we think about the current kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion thought processes in the States right now, just diving a little bit into that, how deeply do you believe like the diversity around you has factored into your journey, and like how important do you think D&I is in terms of, making sure that there's inclusivity in every aspect of our lives?
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of who I am. It's not like a buzzword or a thing that I just want to check off for me or want to be a part of. I think that like growing up with such a diverse family, I have families that have family members that have blue eyes, blonde hair, all the way to very dark skin tone, different hair texture family members. And in all that, it just showed how my big family had hardworking people, incredibly talented people. And I saw really firsthand every unique person and story created like the bigger picture of my family. And whenever I talk about like DI and all that stuff, I'm drawing from personal journey. It's all about making sure that the voice is heard and that, you're making a path when you are going to a new country. And that's why, like, even with my podcast, Similarly Different, I focus on bringing people together, being able to celebrate our differences rather than just taking off boxes. And even with like having American values and coming to the US, like you come and you have this idea of freedom and individuality and courage and to dream big, no matter where you come from, that's like the American dream. And I think embracing DEI is really about living those values every day, ensuring that everyone gets a chance to shine, really putting people in the forefront that are talented, that are meant to be there, and contribute to their actual unique perspective. It's not just a policy or a checklist or something that it's a write-off because the company should do it to look better. And I think that I live that way with the people that I have around me, the people that I surround myself with, the companies I want to work with. And right now it's just a very interesting time, the way things are shifting and the way things are moving. But I do hope that people not only look within, but also look to the sides and see that there is so much more that we can be if we stick together rather than start creating this segregation.
Yeah, I love a few different things that you mentioned. I felt very lucky to be exposed to a lot of different cultures via international work or travel, and just getting to meet different people. And I think there were two things, which is appreciating difference and diversity, and genuinely being curious and wanting to go out and respect people and different cultural customs and norms and different upbringings and where people came from, but also recognizing that talent exists in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And I think about, the other thing that you said was around not just checking a box on DEI. And I believe so strongly in that, particularly because there are real issues and real challenges that manifest themselves in some of these kind of systemic divides. And I think about, in my way, where can I affect early on in the process the things that lead to these divides? And so it's access to education, it's access to housing. I don't really mention it often. I'm really proud. My sister leads a charity that's working to solve family homelessness. And when you look at family homelessness, it stems into education opportunities. It stems into then from education into secondary education into, the ability to have and find a job, and food security, housing security. All those things have such a big role. And those are more prevalent in minority kind of populations. And so I think that it's a big problem that we need to take action on, not just at the corporate level, but to these sources of the things that drive inequity. And I don't think that makes businesses that it removes the accountability that we have to make good decisions and to create safe and welcoming spaces. I just think we as society need to take a more holistic and broad approach to the things that drive kind of the end outcomes.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel strongly about it, but hopefully that was a coherent thought.
No, it's always good when you just kind of get into the, like, don't even look in the camera, just talk, because that just means you're thinking, you're ruminating. And I don't know, when I think about it, you said something that really, I think struck a chord with me, was that it's not about looking at it at a corporate level. It's about looking at it foundationally. I think as a whole, like, marginalization and underrepresentation is a cyclical it's just cyclical. It's something that's it feels like it's ingrained and it's really hard to escape. And so there has to be a foundational resolution. Diversity creates more creativity within groups. So how do we then allow and help our youth to think more creatively, to problem solve together, and figure out how to make sure that every positive end, or every end, is positive but also inclusive? America it's the land of the free, the home of the brave. It's not the land of some of the free and some of the brave. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's really something that we have to figure out at a foundational level, is let's get away from the corporations. Like, I don't care if you say Amazon or Meta or whatever focuses on these things. It's like, if there is even a question that they have an obligation to focus on those things, it means that down to our foundation, we did not breed it well enough for it to be something that we think about day in and day out that will help us.
Right. Because it shouldn't be a program. It should be in the foundation of, it's like, oh, they're removing all these programs. Why was it a program to begin with? It should have been in the foundation of the company. So I think it's like, let's go back to the actual structure of how things are being created from the moment it starts, and include the right ingredients into it for it to actually blossom correctly.
Yeah, if your DEI program is like, let's make sure we put all the women on the website so it looks like we have women in our company. It's just like the wrong approach.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think it's interesting, and there's been such an arc on this topic over the last few years, and there's these ideas, and I don't preach to be an expert, but having done a lot of self-reflection and lived my own life and walked in my shoes, I think there was this like, no, we need to treat everyone the same. There can be no difference. And it's like, it's awesome if I walk up to my Latin friend and I say, hey, from a Latin perspective, like you grew up in a whole different culture than I did. There's going to be differences. That doesn't mean that we don't have equal footing or that we don't respect one another. But I view it the same way as I walk up to Gen Z in our office and I have no idea about all the latest trends. And I'm like, hey, give me some perspective. I respect that you have a subculture. For colleagues from different backgrounds, whether it's within the United States, outside the United States, different religious backgrounds, whatever it may be, it's okay to understand that those subcultures can be different. But I think it's that curiosity, it's the respect, it's not just saying this is different, therefore bad. And I love, it's very cliche, this whole like diversity breeds creativity and thought, but it's so true. Like if you just sit in a room of all of the same people, you're going to have one kind of context and perspective. And I think that is one thing that I've appreciated so much about, various teams that I've had is when someone comes out and goes, you really don't understand this customer population or this audience that we're marketing to, or what this group of consumers who's buying this product thinks about. And so in a capacity also as a creator and influencer with a large audience, brands don't know how to speak as well to an audience of yours like you do. And I think it reinforces this, giving creators some creative control over how to best message to their audience, seeking their input on content, on how to approach their audience to have content that really resonates. It's different is okay. And I think it's exploring that difference and seeking to understand before placing judgment is kind of where we need to be.
Yeah, I recently went to San Francisco and talked at Gap Inc. With Univision Televisa, which is a network. And I was one of 3 creators that spoke there. And in that conversation, we were talking about how inclusion was really needed inside the Gap umbrella in the sense of their marketing. And, I was telling them, I said one of the things, there was a fellow creator next to me and she's from St. Thomas, but she's Dominican and she's very dark skinned, beautiful. And she was like, I didn't grow up. There was no Gap growing up in St. Thomas. Like that just didn't exist in the mall that we had. And she was like, but when I came to the States, it was really cool when I would see Gap and when my mom would wear a crew neck that said Gap on it. And she goes, but I hope to one day see a girl that looks like me in a commercial. And then when it was my turn to speak, I said, I hope you guys understand what she said though. She doesn't mean that she hopes to see herself in one campaign, one every 5 years, once a year, for you guys to say we did it. It's for you to guys actually start sprinkling in and understanding that there's a variety group of ways that people look, not only in the world, in Latinos and everything in different cultures, but start actually implementing in overall your marketing, because then that's when you're really going to capture people and people are going to understand you. And then on the creator side, it's like, if you're going to come and bring us in for a brand deal and you're going to send a brief, listen, we all get it. We got a brief. We know we have to follow some guidelines. But when you come to reach out to us for a brand deal, it's because you liked our content, you liked our audience, and you liked what we're already doing. So you can't expect us to go and submit a brief that has authentic touch to who we are. And then you have redline it up and down, because at that point, go hire an anonymous model and make a commercial out of it. Because it's now no longer Yanina. It has, you've changed let's say I'm creating like a Noche Buena, like a Christmas on the 24th, like a brand deal campaign, and you've broken it down. It is no longer the emotional feeling that I have through Noche Buena. Now it is X brand with X people approval and, their own opinions of it. So it's also letting the creator be creative if that's what you came in to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. And speaking about you and your creativity, there's a lot that has gone into your brand and your niche as you brought that together. How did you start to really culminate that brand, and like what would you say let you identify as in terms of a creator? Like what is your niche? What do you want to focus on? What do you want to grow?
I call myself the Latina girl next door because I am Latina first and foremost.
Mm.
But I'm also want to be so relatable and attainable that you can reach out to me, that you are going to get a response first and foremost, so that I have a human connection to you even before my podcast. When I started creating a blog, it was called Yanina Oyarzo, and the tagline was called Let's Talk About It, because my interest in being a creator and being a host has always been, how can I communicate human to human? And if you like something of me because you think it's dope or whatever, like, I'm going to put you on. I'm going to help if it helps you, because if I help you, then we're just shining brighter together. Like, I thankfully have not felt, while I have dealt, I have not felt competition between my friends. I have dealt with it, of other people feeling that way, but I just feel, as cliche and as corny as it might sound, if you light up somebody else, the room gets brighter. And that's how I've worked around my branding and my niche. I've never been like the chef or the girl that knows how to do like a spaceship on her eyes. It's more like, I'm going to help you with the core things that I know how to do well and add a little spice to it. And it's just going to overall make your life better, whether it be a boost of confidence, whether it be help you how to heal, whether it be help you have some statement pieces in your closet, and then you can experiment after you have the statement pieces. Or if it's a guy, I've had so many guys, and I actually love, these are my favorite DMs, when a guy reaches out to me and he's like, hey, you posted something of this, and because of it, I'm about to start therapy. Or like, hey, you posted this one quote and you wrote a whole description of your thought process behind it, and it actually made me think, like, and I went to apologize to my ex because I realized I was being avoidant or I was having emotional immaturity. And I've had a girl be like, my brother showed me your page and he was like, I think you should follow. And I'm like, I love that, because also, even as being a woman in the creator field, they think, oh, your DMs must be crazy. My DMs are so calm. They are so like PG, sometimes PG-13, but like, it's very rare that I have the weirdos. And I love that for me, because it just shows that my branding and marketing and niche that I have created overall really does transcend, and the right people come and stay. I don't need the others, you know?
I love that. The firm believer that, there's so many people that can win. And I think, by lifting up others, especially in like the creator space and social space, I would argue that competition is inherently bad, unless you're Kendrick Lamar or something, um,
And you're performing in the Super Bowl.
yeah, I mean, like he's working the beef, but pretty much everyone else, it's, how do you lift each other up? The collabs are so fun. I think it's so fun to see people lift other people up, highlight their content, support them, work together. And I think there's so much more to be gained from that. And it's funny because a lot of the creators we talked to, I remember when we were talking with Lewis, he was talking about how he did like celebrity kind of roast reviews, and then he was like, I started meeting these people and I like them and I need to be kind to them. So now he's like, I roast, but it's like all in good fun and I'm their friend. And I just think, everyone who maybe starts in that kind of like, I'm going to come at you niche, they realize that it doesn't get them that far and it creates enemies. Brands don't want to work with that. It's a harder path for you personally, and you're just going to miss out on opportunity. And I think there are so many opportunities in life that are there kind of waiting for you if you just kind of are kind and open and kind of willing to walk through the door. And I think that is one thing, and it comes back to this topic of like diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think one of the biggest things that we can instill in a lot of young people is that they can go take the step. They should be bold. They deserve to have an opportunity. And I think that's one thing where, I'm in a very different position. Like, we grew up and we weren't rich. We had modest means, but I still walked in and I felt like I should be able to do this. Like, I'm going to get out there. And I think every kid should be able to walk out there and say, I deserve this opportunity. I deserve this versus, oh, I'm not good enough. Like that,
Yeah.
like they would never do that for me. I could never get that job. And they just stop before they try. And I think that's one of the biggest things when I talk about how do we get to the root of the problem. There are some of these like inherent lack of confidence, lack of the right to win, lack of the right for love, like all of these things. If we can help address some of those challenges, those cascade over a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I think if we can reinforce those at a young age and instill that in people, it would have a tremendous impact on a lot of different individuals and groups of people.
100%. And I like that a lot. And, when it comes to you as a creator, you said, your first opportunity got you $3,000.
My second.
Oh, second.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
My first one was 500 Vaseline, the brand inside Target.
Okay, lovely. So as we veer off into a more creator focused conversation here, I'd love to dive a little bit into some numbers. You don't have to, tell me the most grand, largest numbers and sums, but for a little bit of that salary and compensation transparency, do you have any kind of collection of deals that you've done and that gave you a decent bit of money that you just looked at and you were like, wow, I can't believe I'm about to make this?
Yeah, I cried when I did 35 because I was like, wait, what? I remember I got the email from my manager, Mel. Well, I got the text from my manager, Mel, and it was a screenshot of the approval that she had submitted. And my manager, Mel and Sarah, they were like, so this just got approved and we just wanted to share it with you. And I actually still have the picture. I'm laying in my bed and there's tears coming out. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And she's like, yeah, babe, they approved it. And I was like,
wow.
They want to pay me 35. She was like, yeah. And it was crazy because I'm a big manifester. And I had put the brand on my vision board. I've done vision boards for the past 5.5 years. The last 3 years, I turned them from physical to digital, and then I print them and I put them in a frame and I put it right next to my beauty room so that I could visually see it, but also not waste paper and all that stuff, like cutting it up. So I do it in Canva, and I have like a whole template now that I do. And I had that brand there, and I want to say it was like June or May of that year. It was 2 years ago. And I was like, not only is it a brand that I organically use, but it's a big brand that everyone knows. And I was like, and they want me? And the biggest thing is that I think that as creators, a lot of people don't know how much money you can make. And there is a big lack of imposter syndrome if you're not at a certain number. And I'm still under 100,000 on followers on Instagram. I'm over 100,000 on TikTok, but I'm still under 100,000. And that number that I hit, 35, was when I was under 80,000. So it's like, it just goes to show you, if you understand marketing, if you understand your brand, if you are consistent, and I always say character over talent, because I will outwork anyone. Just get me in the room, is what I always say. I'm like, I always tell when me and my manager have strategy calls, they probably think I'm psychotic because they'll be like, okay, what are your goals? I'm like, this, and they're like, okay. And I'm like, why not? My biggest thing is like, why not? I have lived my life with the why not mentality. If that person can go in, why can't I? Even in my podcast, like, I self-fund my podcast, but I have big goals for my podcast. And whenever I have a production meeting with my producer, I'm always like, why not? Why can't we have a meeting with that person? Why not? Why can't we go take it there? Why not? I want to have this guest. And I was like, why can't I have them? And she now she understands like how I think. But in the beginning, when people meet me, they're like, this girl. And I'm just like, just get me in the room, and like, I'll close the deal. And it's because my hard work and my passion will show through. And as long as the person will just give me like half an inch, I'll be like, I won't make them like regret it.
I love that. I think just that hustle, that belief that you can go out and win is awesome. I'm curious, on the podcast, you talked about, why can't we get this guest or that guest? Was there a moment where you were, you got someone on and you're just like, I cannot believe that this person is agreeing to be on my podcast, or, some guests that even for the time you were like, okay, I didn't think we could ever pull that at this stage in our growth.
So my podcast started in May, so it hasn't been too long of a time, but I did confirm a podcast guest. And it was so funny because my podcast is 91% female, and I was having a conversation with my producer Courtney, and I was telling her, I was like, man, like, I don't know who's going to be like the person that finishes like the season and da 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 da. And then I looked down at my phone and I'm like, oh my God, this person just followed me on TikTok. Like the person that I was just thinking about that would be great. And I hadn't tagged them or anything. And it was the day that TikTok was going down. And I remember being in the studio and being like, do I write to them? Do I write to them? TikTok's about to go down. What do I do? I need them to like read my message if I write to them on Instagram. And I wrote to her so fast and I was like, hi, I love what you've done. Da-da-da-da. I would love to have you on my podcast. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. I said, okay, I'm writing you a DM. Please check your DMs. And I like went to Instagram. I wrote her on DM, and now she's coming in a week and a half. So it's really exciting because like it's going to be, it's the closing for this season, but I have so many people that I can't wait to have on my podcast that I know it just takes the right conversation or the right person introducing it for it to happen. But that's going to be a really fun episode because she's just like a fun person.
Yes, we're the same way. So I think we started in April.
Oh.
Yeah. And so we're, almost podcast siblings. But I feel like we're the same way still, like, we've definitely had some people on our podcast that I was excited about or Scott was excited about. And now as we think about it, we start to plan out the rest of this year, we are thinking like, you know what? Like we've had some pretty amazing people here. Mm-hmm. What's stopping us from going to somebody who like typically you would think to yourself is out of reach, and approaching that person and saying, hey, these are the people who I've had. This is, what we talk about. This is how many people enjoy our podcast. Like, we think you should join us, you know, and having the confidence to do that, because I really do think something that you are really, really kind of just giving off in terms of your energy is just like the confidence to just go for it. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. But why not?
And, I always say it's better for you to get a no and why than just wonder. Because I can work with a no and why. Tell me, like, even with my producer, when she was like, oh, we should wait for some meetings, I'd be like, why? And she's like, well, because your stream should be at this number. I was like, okay, perfect. You're giving me a to-do list, But like one of the guests that I really love that I had on season 1, because I'm on my season 2 of my show right now. I break it up by seasons. Season 1 was Terry Cole. She's a psychotherapist that does it for high-end celebrities. She's a book author, best-selling author. And I was like, when I sent her a DM, I didn't think she was going to reply to me, but she's a psychotherapist for Ariana Grande, and she replied to me instantly and was like, I'm going to be in LA this day. And I was like, I can make it work. She's like, okay, perfect. Never gave us an issue, never, nothing. Was the sweetest human, wanted to do a second round of it. And I was just like, she could have deemed me unimportant, green. That podcast doesn't have that many views or followers, but there was something about me that she liked, and she loved the interview. And anytime till this day, if I post a clip, instantly repost it, instantly collabs without me having to ask her. Like, and I appreciate the support like that, because I think that it just shows one from my passion and my dedication to what you do. And I think that that's really important. Whatever you're going to go in for and do, like put your all into it, because other people are going to be more receptive to it. And even if you're not getting that many yeses in the beginning, you got to believe it before anybody else does. So
I love that. It's funny. One thing that you said about Terry Cole is like how she jumps on and likes your posts. That just a funny anecdote. Like, I have a very modest following. It's not what I'm known for, but I post my stories, and after having all of these folks on as guests, when I go through and I have my whatever 100 views on my story, the names of who are actually looking at it, I'm like, these people are taking the time to actually like look at my story. And it is interesting. And I think like one thing that's been impressed upon me is even the most you know, people with large followings or really important jobs, at the end of the day, they are human and they like to build connection. They want to have meaningful dialogue. And I think also one thing that I think you've done a great job too is treating people like humans and treating them like you respect them and you respect what they've been able to accomplish, but you also aren't awkward and you're not treating them in a way that makes them uncomfortable, and you're approachable with them. And I think it is something that everyone who is a human wants to seek connection and wants to be seen as a human being. And so I think part of just my guidance as people go out and they launch their, creator journey and they start to meet people is just be normal, interact with people, seek to connect with them as a human being and show them respect, but also just, I think everyone wants to build relationships. So just an interesting anecdote. It's funny. Like I think anyone with a podcast or anyone who's a creator, Kwame talks a lot about it, is like when he came off the show, he's like, you would not believe who just followed me. And it's like some NFL athlete or some actress or something. And it's wild. Just how much access social media has given us to connect with people, whether they're mega celebrities or the person next door. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's really cool to notice that like everyone is interested in the things that everyone is interested in. It might sound stupid coming out, but in actuality, like I just watched the video. I think you might have sent it to me. I think Madison sent it to me, of like a list of people talking about their reactions to Love Is Blind. And it was like Zendaya. It was like
Variety did that. It was Variety magazine, yes, for the whatever award was recently. The Golden Globes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like Ariana Grande, and she was like, "Yeah, I check the couple's pages like every other month or so. Like I want to make sure they're together." And it's so funny because like somebody who might have literally 2 followers who just like hangs out at home, isn't a big social media person, isn't a big social person, all the way up to like 100 million follower Ariana Grande, like they have a common ground. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's just really funny seeing what connects all of us. But that's just something that I think it's just, I don't know, it was really cool. It was a really sacred moment and I really love it. But with that being said, we're getting closer to the end of this conversation. So there's a couple of things that we like to talk to creators about as we go through the conversation and as we come closer to an end. And one of those is I'd love to know, obviously you worked with some incredible brands, looking at your page and seeing who you've already had some partnerships with. Do you still have a brand out there that is, your dream brand that if they called you today, you would be over the moon?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with YSL Beauty. I had a 6-month partnership with them and I love them. But I grew up modeling and then I went into TV hosting and then I went into the influencer space. And I think like any brand like a YSL that deemed a creator, important enough in their high fashion would be great. Cause I already did a little bit dabbling in the beauty part of it, but I love YSL. I'm a YSL girl. I'm not even like a high brand girl, but I love YSL. So probably YSL. I have an Audi. I've always loved Audis. So last year I did a campaign with Genesis, but I would love to do a campaign with Audi because it just really hits home. And I just love the way Audi looks, Audi drives on that end. And I think more than anything, a really big goal that I have is that I love fashion. I'm not a big fashionista, but I know how to put a good outfit together for your everyday girl to be elevated. And I would love to do a capsule collection with a brand, whether it's a smaller brand like JLux that they are in Los Angeles, but they're still very big online, or a bigger brand like a Gap, or, like a Lululemon or something like that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think those brand deals that allow you to explore your creativity and kind of show off your personality, but also make it accessible to your audience it's like that perfect sweet spot where it's YSL is awesome, but it also is, a little prohibitive in certain areas. I think that the fashion and beauty makeup side of it, maybe more accessible, but I think, the ability for someone to buy that exact outfit at Gap and then look and feel confident and be like, okay, this is the Yanina look. Like I love those types of moments. So as you look out, you talked about, your vision board and the ambitions, the goal you have. What's on the horizon for 25? Like what are you really, really excited about? If you were to be looking back at the end of 25 saying, wow, I feel great about this year, what would it have looked like?
I really tried to implement more of a healthy balance with everything this year. It was really important to me. Last year, I was burning out a lot. And I just always say that the iPhone doesn't work great at 3%, and neither does the human body. So it's really like implementing that. And it sounds silly, but like when you think about it, the apps start crashing. That goes and correlates with like fogginess brain. Also, super late in the conversation, but I'm an analogy girl, if you haven't noticed by now. I do analogies for everything. Some of it hits, others are like, interesting, but it's like, the same thing. Like you got to really recharge yourself. And in that, I have prioritized more traveling this year for friends and family. Like I said, I'm going to surprise somebody for their birthday tomorrow. I went to a friend. My friend lives between Puerto Rico and Miami, and within 3 days she was like, can you make it here? And I was like, let me see. I was able to get it from miles that I had just stored. And I was like, yeah, I can. I have nothing that I'm doing here. But the fear of, am I going to miss out if I leave? Am I going to miss out on an opportunity? All these thoughts. But at the end of the day, if I know I'm a hard worker and I know what God has for me and I know that I'm doing the right things, I shouldn't miss out on also living, because living will lead me to more creativity, will lead me to more recharge, and then I will do my work better. So I think that that's one of my big goals this year, is really implementing also living life and not just like blocking things out. But another thing is working with, all the brands that I have in my vision board, working with the brands that I have talked to my team about, being able to be more creative in certain partnerships with a capsule collection or an edit of things of that sort, and really hitting some of these guests for season 3 that I have written down with my podcast team, because I'm like, if Jessica Alba follows me already, why can't she be on the podcast? You live in LA, girl, you like my stuff, just come on. So there are things like that I don't know, sometimes they seem so far away, but really when you think about it, it's really not that far.
That's dope. That's really dope. And I really do hope you get Jessica Alba then.
I will get Jessica Alba on the podcast.
Oh yes, we love it. It's not a hope. It's going to happen.
Yes.
It's just what time.
Exactly.
So we're gonna go through a last bit, a quick fire round. All right. I mixed it up a little bit. It used to be just creator based, but the last question now it's a little bit of a, comes out of left field, but hopefully you've got a good answer for us. So
Okay.
I just basically ask this or that.
Okay.
And then the last one is just a plain question and you answer that. You think you're ready for it?
Yep.
All right, solid. So to start off with, Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok.
Okay, easy. Why is that?
You don't think so much. You're able to just be goofy and just like go, on to the next.
Lovely. Okay. A story or a post?
I would say a story if I'm being silly, or like I'm a very goofy person because it'll expire in 24 hours. But a post if it's something meaningful so it can stay on the feed. Okay,
I like it. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is probably a Bible verse. I have it right here. I have wow. What do I have?
Ephesians.
No, it's not even Ephesians. It's Philippians 4:13. Sorry, gotta go back to church. No, it's Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I wrote it when I was going through a divorce, and I put it here because I felt that I needed to really tap into my spiritual strength, my physical strength, to be able to be my best self in that time. And whenever I am feeling like I'm going through a really tough time, I know that I have to blend both to be able to get through my day.
Amazing. And then the very last one, I feel like I should move the favorite quote one to the last one because that one was a powerful one. But what's your favorite movie?
Oh my God, people are going to make fun of me. You guys may not even know it. I said this to somebody the other day and they were like, come on, you got to choose something else. Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
I have an argument with this as well.
Mm-hmm.
It Takes Two by Mary-Kate and Ashley. Because I think this is the first movie. This is the original Parent Trap. The Parent Trap, in my opinion, took the idea and did not get sued, Lindsay Lohan did great, but the original Parent Trap is It Takes Two by Mary-Kate and Ashley, and I love that movie. I can replay the entire movie. I know all the words.
Fantastic. Well, look, you aced our speed round. We are just about at the end of our podcast. Is there anything else that you want to leave our audience with before we call it a day?
I think that don't let the little voice in your head freeze you or stop you from doing anything that you're curious about. There is space for everyone, no matter if you think that your peer does it at a higher level or in a way better level. It's your voice. It's your way of expressing it, your way of explaining it. So don't let it ever stop you, and consistency over everything.
I love it. Well, it's been an amazing conversation. Yanina, thanks so much for spending time with us. For everyone out there listening, go check out Yanina's page and content. Check out the podcast, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, for sure. Bye-bye, everyone.